Welcome to the Israel Now Forum webinar series. I'm Maura Schreier-Fleming, Chairman of the Israel Now Forum Speakers Committee. The in-person Israel Now Forum is in the planning stages for 2026. We want to thank our webinar partner, Southwest Jewish Congress. Today's webinar features Lissa Kenkel. Lissa Kenkel is the founder and CEO of TRACE Initiative, which stands for Transparency, Responsibility, and Accountability in Education. TRACE is a watchdog organization focused on exposing policy violations in K-12 public education. What they do is examine how political and extremist narratives enter school systems under the guise of equity, activism, or social justice. She works closely with parents, educators, legal experts, and policymakers to identify risk, document misconduct, and restore institutional accountability in education. She led initiatives to engage policymakers at the local and national levels. Please use the Q&A Zoom feature to submit your questions. During the webinar, we'll have time for questions. And for security reasons, Lissa will be off camera. So let's start with a presentation from Lissa. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Am I sharing my screen?
Yes, you are.
Okay, that's the wrong screen. Okay. It's not a good start. Okay. Are you seeing my presentation?
I have the first, you have to make your screen bigger.
Okay, are you seeing it now?
It's a gray screen. And the next screen, if you advance it, we should see the next slide. If you advance to the next slide.
Okay. Sorry, everyone, bear with me here. I'm having technical difficulties. Okay, so you should see now. Do you see my screen?
Radical influence in public education.
Okay. All right. You don't see my notes, right?
I do, but I don't know if the rest of the people can. So you might want to go to the full view.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and start this. Okay. So my name is Lissa Kenkel, and I am the founder of TRACE Initiative, which stands for Transparency, Responsibility, and Accountability in Education. My path to this work began about 15 years ago when I was fighting anti-Semitism in the schools that my children were in and in my community as well. And fast forward to October 7th, my work then transitioned over to being more of a community advocate and working within my community, going out into the protests, identifying some of the people who were actually in the streets, who were creating havoc, and who were part of larger networks. And I started mapping them and trying to figure out who was coordinating all of this. And then I realized that where we really need to start is in K through 12 education. We need to start with the youth because that's what the people who were out in the streets were doing. They were indoctrinating the youth. So I shifted my focus to K through 12 education, and I started looking at indoctrination and radicalization in the schools. So I'm going to go ahead and share a little presentation that I've put together for you now.
If there's sound, we're not hearing it.
Are you not hearing the sound?
No, we're not.
No.
So maybe we'll just abort that and I'll start asking questions. And then if you can go back to that at the end. So
Sure.
I would like to understand, and you could start talking about how these policy violations get into K 12 schools. So, can you talk about how teachers are trained and how the state kind of provides a blueprint that nudges schools to favor certain narratives and goals so that the bias is already baked in?
Sure. So if we look at the bigger picture, we have the teachers' unions, and the teachers' unions are closely aligned with these ideologies. For example, we have Zin Education Project, and they sponsor these teach-ins, Teach Palestine, for example. And they filter in through the teachers' unions. The teachers are members of the unions. The unions have teach-ins as well, where they are directly teaching this content to the teachers, and then the teachers are feeding it into the curriculum. The teachers have a lot of leeway with the curriculum. You know, they can go on the internet and pull up pretty much any material that they want that aligns with their narrative and bring it into the classroom. And there's really not a lot of oversight. The way that we find out about it as parents is when our kids come home with their schoolwork and we see that our kids are learning one side of a narrative. And it's not necessarily just Teach Palestine, but we're also talking about socialism, communism, anti-capitalism.
Can you talk a little bit about that alignment with these anti-Western narratives, which are coming from, and by the way, Michigan has its educators have offered professional development credit for their from an activist to teach Palestine. So, but I'd like you to talk a little bit about how that comes into the schools as being taught as Western civilization when it's really not.
Sure. I mean, look, there is a pipeline. The teachers who are in the schools teaching these things, they learned it somewhere, right? They learned it in universities. They're being indoctrinated themselves in the universities. This is a long-term plan from the Muslim Brotherhood Manifesto, which I've studied very, very extensively. And they very clearly state in the manifesto the education system is the way to overtake the society, overtake democracy and overtake America. And so you start off with teachers who are in universities who are radicalized and who are taught through CRT or ethnic studies, whatever you want to call it. They're taught this oppressor versus oppressed narrative. And then they come into the schools and they're bringing it to the students, which is why you see second graders walking out of class to protest ICE.
You mentioned something that's very important that I think a lot of people don't understand. This ideological activism in K 12 education has come from movements like the Muslim Students Association, the MSA, and the Students for Justice of Palestine, the SJP. Now it's coming from the Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA, and they have a youth arm called YDSA, Young DSA. Can you talk about what's going on with the YDSA and what they're doing to undermine parents in the K 12 environment?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So the YDSA is actually not new. YDSA has been around for a long time, and it evolved around 2016 when Bernie Sanders became popular in the DSA movement. I will just share very quickly, a lot of people don't know this, that the original founder of DSA was very much a Zionist. He worked on a kibbutz in Israel. And a lot of people who are joining DSA, who are screaming Free Palestine, don't realize that the origins of this movement were in Zionism. And socialism, Israel was the original socialist experiment. Russia turned on Israel because Israel did not want to be under Russia's communist thumb. A lot of people don't recognize that. So the YDSA was sort of a reorganization, a reemergence of, I think it was Young Democratic Socialists. And they mostly have been on college campuses for probably the last 20 to 30 years, but now we're starting to see them on the high school level. And there are, in fact, you have one school in Austin that has a YDSA, but more recently, we see these anti-ICE protests and walkouts, and they're being fueled and funded by the Democratic Socialists of America. You have politicians who are meeting the children at the walkouts. And suddenly these kids have megaphones, they have signs, they have chants. These kids are not coming up with this on their own. They're being fed this by the DSA and by the politicians, and they're not even trying to hide it. The politicians are coming into the schools and they're having these coffee talks with the kids during their student club activity time after school.
Can I ask you a question about how these people are authorized to come in? Because recently in Texas, in a suburb of Dallas, we had a group called Why Islam come in during lunch hour to a high school. They were distributing Qurans, they were distributing hijabs, and they were distributing Why Islam propaganda. Now, this was not authorized, and the teacher that was involved in that has been put on leave. But how do these people come in? If Are they authorized or not?
So it's a lack of oversight. And I will tell you, that was Wiley East High School. And I did a mapping. If we have time, I'd love to share with the audience. I actually mapped the networks and the ideological influence on Wiley East High School. You also have an imam who comes into that school and prays on Friday the Jummah prayers. Well, Jummah prayers are for men only. They exclude women. They have segregated prayer, which is a violation of Title IX. The adults are allowed to come into the school with authorization, but the key is authorization. There is no oversight. You also had in the same school National Hijab Day, where you had teachers trying on hijabs, and it's posted all over social media. And then you have Why Islam coming into the school during a college career day, handing out the Quran and handing out hijabs to anybody who's interested in it. It's a clear lack of oversight.
If you're able to now, can you pull up that map? Because I would like you to know that in Texas, we have a commission, Texas Holocaust Genocide Anti Semitism Advisory Commission. Now, if you just told me that they're violating Title IX, this commission needs to be made aware of this violation. And we have an education commission. They need to be made aware of this Title IX violation. So, would that be the next appropriate thing to do?
So, if you're asking in terms of how do we deal with this, what do we do?
Yes.
Um, there's more to it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen again, and
Okay.
hopefully this works so I can show you the mapping project that I've put together for you. And it looks like somebody has their hand raised. Okay, so you should be able to see here
Yes, we
a
do.
map.
Yes.
Okay, yay. Okay, so this is a map of, let me just zoom out a little bit here, of your community, your neighborhood. Okay, you can see we have Wiley East MSA here in the very center of it.
To make it
And
full, I think it's a little small, but if you point out and tell us,
sure,
that's okay.
sure. I'm going to zoom in on it. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can see, first of all, we have the Muslim Student Association that is a direct offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Student Association was created by a combination of backing from Saudi Arabia and the Muslim Brotherhood in the 1960s. You can find the MSA in almost every high school in the country. In some variation. It might not be called the MSA, but they're basically doing the same things. So if we look at Wiley East MSA, you can see what I was referencing earlier. You have Zishan Parupia, who's coming in on Friday into the the auxiliary gym during lunch and having Jummah prayers, which is for men only. And then here is the incident that you were talking about, where this student went into college career day and was handed a Quran. And he didn't take the hijab, but this made news in social media. But what I would like to show you here on this map is that if you look at Wiley East High School and all of these nodules here, this high school is not more than 3 degrees separated from radical influence, okay? So Zishan is the gentleman who comes to the school to pray. He's a part of the Council of the Crescent. The Council of the Crescent makes it very clear on their social media, look what they're doing. They're doing MSA outreach. These are the schools we're going to be at. And when we'll be there, you have to RSVP. Zishan works with a gentleman named Adil Jina. Adil is a fifth grade math teacher in a local elementary school. It's not clear. I couldn't figure out whether he's a current teacher or he's full-time now focused on his youth outreach. But if you look at Adil, he is connected to this gentleman through Roots Community Center of Dallas, Fort Worth. Okay, this is Sheikh Abdul Nasir Jangda, and he has been identified as an extremist cleric by the Middle East Forum, which is a very reputable NGO which monitors these things. He has been accused of defending sex slavery and advocating for the killing of apostates. Okay. He is directly connected to a fifth grade math teacher. He is not even 2 degrees separated from the Wiley East MSA. If we look to the left over here, we have the Muslim American Society, which is an offshoot of the Muslim Student Association. Muslim American Society is connected to Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay. Then you have 2 people who are running the Muslim American Society in Dallas. Marwan Maroof, which you probably know his name, he was arrested in September and put on a deportation list. He's related by marriage to Bayan Elashi, who was indicted and convicted in the Holy Land Foundation terror financing case, which came after September 11th, 2001. This gentleman, Mohammed Ba'ajour, worked alongside Maroof, and he has been now doing outreach to the students via MSA and the Muslim American Society to have them advocate for Marwan Maroof. Now, something that I really want to point out here, because this is something that everyone has heard of, is this gentleman who's advocating for the release of Marwan Maroof is directly connected to the East Plano Islamic Center. Okay, that is at the center of Epic City. He is a director. He is a director. Excuse me?
Now it's renamed the Meadow. Well, East Plano Islamic Center, and their land purchase.
Right. It's at the center of all of it. Okay. East Plano Islamic Center is connected to another organization called ICNA. And you can see right here the connection directly back to Wiley East MSA. ICNA has been under federal investigation and still is for a connection to Southeast Asian Islamic groups. This is just a very, very small sample. I'm looking at one school in your school district. I did look at other schools and there are issues there too. But this just goes to show you the outside influence and how they have access to the children and to the schools.
We have a first question that came in, but before I ask you that one, I want to ask if this is part of what you refer to on your website as this evidence first review. Is this typically what the Trace Initiative does for a school district?
So no, we don't typically map a school district to this degree. I did this for the purpose of the webinar, but what we do is we create a very detail-oriented report. We deal only in facts. We don't speculate about what anybody is thinking, but we collect the evidence, we document it, we outline what policy violations there are. If there are violations of the law, we outline it. We draft a letter to the school district, to the superintendent, to the principal, to anybody who we can think of who has any kind of responsibility. And we tell them, look, this is what's happening in your school. These are the laws that are breaking, and we're going to follow up.
Does a school district, who can ask for this particular review? Do they have to have evidence to present to the Trace Initiative, or they are concerned and want to ask some questions? How does it work?
Right. So, I mean, both ways. Obviously, it's easier for us if you come to us and you've collected your own evidence. We're working with a school district in Oregon right now, and they had documented just thousands and thousands of screenshots. And we took it and we put it together. We compiled a report, and then we presented that report along with violations to the school district, and we directly engaged with the school district.
Do you have plans to bring this research that you did for us today to the Wiley School District? because and this was the question, why is this not brought to the superintendent that as taxpayers, parents have a voice and will fire the teachers and the superintendent if there's no input from the parents?
Sure. And that's a really good point that you bring up because parents are afraid to open their mouths for fear of retribution. I lived through it for 15 years, and I can tell you retribution is real,
From the
which is one
superintendent.
of from the entire school district. Yes. And I can tell you that it's one of the reasons why I founded Trace was to be that sort of buffer in between the parents and the school district. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the heat because they're not going to come after me. So if a parent has concerns and they come to Trace, we will advocate on their behalf. But then we also encourage parents to, once we have reached out to the superintendent, to then email the principal, the superintendent, and say, hey, look, I see this is a problem in my school district. What are you doing about it? So they're not taking the direct fire, but they're still becoming advocates and engaged.
Is the Juma incident in Wiley, has that been brought to the attention of the superintendent there or the principal there yet?
Not that I'm aware of. This is something that I found just by going through the social media of the Muslim Student Association. So that's the first part of our investigative work is looking at their web pages and looking for issues on their web pages.
So let's say parents and people that are watching this webinar, and a lot of people couldn't come and they're going to watch and listen to the recording. What do they need to ask their children for? What do they need to ask their teachers for so that they can learn some things to report to you to say this needs to stop before it gets past anyone?
Sure. So, there are a number of different things. First of all, I'm not sure about Texas, and it's something that we can look at afterwards, but in most states, parents have a right to request to review curriculum.
Mhm.
So you can ask what your child is learning in class. That's first of all. That's the
What do they
first step.
get when they ask for review? I would like to review the curriculum. What should they expect to receive?
The response that says, well, we're not going to share it with you. So you probably then are looking at filing freedom of information requests. Look, who are doing something wrong are not willingly going to hand over what they're doing. So it's super important that you're speaking with your children, that you're looking at what your children are bringing home from school. I know teenagers are not so open about these things usually, but if you have a kid in elementary school, sit down and watch what they're doing for homework. Politics doesn't belong in reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Do you
Um,
see it then? You see it in the elementary schools as well?
oh, sure. Yeah. The other thing too is not just talking about curriculum, but looking at the student clubs. They might even be a bigger issue if we look at what just happened in Wiley East High School, bringing in outside adults who are praying. And I can tell you in my school district, they've actually reserved bathrooms for students to go in and perform wudu before their prayers, which is cleaning your hands, your nose, your feet, your face, and no other student is allowed in that bathroom. So these are the things that we as parents can find just by looking at their social media. Go to the Muslim Student Association social media. It's very easy to find. I can help you, and just see what they're doing and start taking screenshots and start documenting it. And then if you need help compiling a report and taking it to the school, Trace Initiative is happy to do that for you.
How would someone get in touch with the Trace Initiative?
Sure. So our website is traceinitiative.org. And we also have a Substack that we write a lot about issues in K through 12 and indoctrination in K through 12. And we're Trace Initiative at Substack. We're also Trace Initiative on Instagram. Um, so the first step is you can reach out to us through the contact form, and most importantly for us is we'll have a conversation with you. And obviously in Plano there are documented issues, but there's no guarantee that you something that you see that you really are bothered by, there's no guarantee that you're going to get results from the school district. I can promise you that. So I think that the thing that parents can do individually is to set up a meeting with the principal, go in and talk to the principal. And this is how I started. I know the first meeting is difficult, and you'll get pushback. And I was asked to teach the equity team at my children's school about anti-Semitism because they didn't understand it. So you have to be prepared to get a lot of, feigned ignorance or, well, this is our policy. So, but definitely reach out to us. We're happy to guide, to help. We have partner organizations that we work with as well.
Let me ask you something. You said that you went in as an individual. Were there no outside groups willing to do the work to combat some of these clearly illegal situations?
So, Mara, you have to understand that this was happening to my children for over a decade in our school system, and nobody was addressing it. I reached out to a couple of the really large legacy organizations, and they basically told me, we can't help you. And I think you'll see that there are a lot of smaller grassroots organizations like Trace Initiative that have emerged after October 7th because we saw the legacy organizations are not helping the little person. They're not helping the parent like me whose child is, being subjected to blatantly anti-Semitic material in the classroom. So yeah, it took me being rejected basically by every legacy organization I went to say, okay, I'm in this alone.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that it's hard for an individual to act, but your organization will help an individual to address some of these clear violations in K-12 education. If a parent after hearing this or a grandparent after hearing this wants to start to check, because after these hijab days and all these other violations happen, it's too late. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. What can some listener do now as a result of listening to you today? What should they do?
So let's use Wiley East High School as an example. So you've just seen only three things that are going on in the school, and I can tell you that they are clear violations of federal law, in addition to school district policies, which have to adhere to federal law. And I've looked over the Plano Independent School District policies. So I would say that you could start by sending an email to the principal and asking, okay, you have had this person come into your school on Fridays and lead prayer with the students. I'd like to know who approved him to come in, who vetted him. And that's the first step because, yes, outside individuals are allowed in the school, but it has to be approved. And it's the lack of oversight that we're seeing that anybody can walk into a school, put their license through the machine, get a badge, and be on their merry way and do whatever they want. It's a safety issue, but it's beyond a safety issue. It's an indoctrination issue.
So you also mentioned that a parent should request the curriculum that their child is being educated in school. That's another thing they could do.
Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't just all of a sudden start going to every single teacher and saying, I want to see the curriculum. But if you have, if your spidey sense is telling you that something is off in your child's classroom, you most certainly can email the teacher. And one thing that I have always done is I haven't just emailed one person. If I emailed the teacher, I made sure that I sent a copy to the principal, that I sent a copy to the superintendent, so that everybody knows you have to answer me because I have now put you on blast.
Were PTAs or PTOs, parents, teachers, organizations, or associations helpful to you in any way?
I never went to them.
Did did you think that it would might help, or you just never thought to do it?
Um, okay, so when I was dealing with it in my children's school, I couldn't even get Jewish parents to stand with me. So I was very much alone, and I didn't have faith in anybody else standing with me. In fact, on many occasions, I was ostracized and alienated in my community for, being problematic. So it just never dawned on me to go to the Parent Teacher Association for something like that.
Okay, if you can stay for a few extra minutes, Lisa, can you do
Hmm.
that? Because we got
Sure.
several more questions. Okay, so does your organization file lawsuits against the ISDs or presenters where this is occurring? And if so, what are the results?
Right. So we have not personally, we have people who we work with who are legal counsel, we personally do not file lawsuits, but we have partners and partner organizations who do file lawsuits. But there's a process. I suppose you can just file a lawsuit, but your chances of winning are not very good if you don't go through the process. So, for example, we had a teacher in Washington State who her social media was egregious, like praising Hamas and saying suicide vest is what people should be wearing to the Met Gala. Really, really bad stuff. That was about 6 months ago. And we got her suspended, but we are still in the process of fighting with the school district to get her fired. And we have had to threaten Title VI lawsuits, and we've had to threaten all sorts of things. So you can't just jump from, oh, look at their Instagram to we're going to sue them.
Here's another, just as a point of reference, in my county in Northern California, the same people, a school board trustee who is an anti-Zionist Green Party member, a Latino group affiliated with Brown Berets, and anti-Zionists from University of California fought to hire an anti-Zionist ethnic studies consultant for the district, are now fomenting high school student anti-ICE walkouts. Additional problem is Reformed Jewish Synagogue officially endorses this anti-ICE group. How can we counter this alliance? Is that part of the equation?
Yeah.
Okay.
So first of all, I think that the way that you approach the walkouts is the students it has to be self-initiated by the students. You cannot have an outside group telling students to walk out. And we know for a fact that that's what's happening. There is not supposed to be, in all of these student clubs, there is not allowed to be outside organizational influence. And there is. So if you see that an outside organization, saying, this is great that these kids are doing this, that's one thing. But if they're providing signs for the walkouts, if they're providing megaphones. So for example, there was one walkout that I was tracking in Indiana. Tell me how a bunch of students at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they walked out and were not allowed back in school. That was the agreement that they made with the principal. So they were unleashed on the streets for 2 hours. Where were they keeping the megaphones that they used? Where were they keeping the signs that they used? They offered hand warmers to the students. Where were they keeping the hand warmers? So really looking and figuring out, are adults meeting them at these walkouts and giving them these things? Sometimes it takes it's called human, where you have to go out physically into the belly of the beast and observe and document.
So it's clear that this is across the country. Why isn't the school administration being taken to the federal authorities like Homeland Security or the Attorney General? Why isn't the federal people helping?
Yeah. So, I can say my school district in particular actually is under threat of being defunded by the federal government because of the activities that they allow to happen. I think that, first of all, the federal government cannot possibly oversee every single school in the country. It's up to us in the community on a very local level to be hyper vigilant about what's happening in our schools, and starting where I started with seeing, okay, there are issues here, documenting them, reporting them, and there's a process, unfortunately, and you can't go from A to Z. You have to go through the entire alphabet to get to Z.
Do you find that this is primarily an Islamist driven agenda?
No,
What are the other,
absolutely not.
what is it? What's driving it?
Yeah, so we have what's called the Red Green Alliance, which red being communism, socialism, green being Islamism. And it's you see like the Queers for Palestine, everyone is like, make that make sense, they'll be murdered in any Islamic country. But they are working together because they have one shared purpose, and that is to take down Western society and to change our democracy. And, the enemy of my enemy is my friend for them right now. And look at Zohran Mamdani, who just overwhelmingly won New York. That was huge for the Democratic Socialists of America. And you can go to the DSA's website and see every candidate they're endorsing. And it's up to us locally to do that, to go to that website, see who they're endorsing, find other candidates, run for the school board or town council ourselves, and put the right people in place who are going to stop this.
Lisa, we have a bunch of people who want to know how they can support the Trace Initiative, if they want to contact you after. And this webinar will be made available to people who've signed up, and the link for it as well. But if they have, I mean, it's clear, I see from the comments coming in that there are issues all over the country that are exactly the same thing that's happening here in Texas, and they need your help. So how would they contact you?
Sure. So they can go to, as I said earlier, traceinitiative.org is our website. We have a contact us form. I will say we are a small team
How many
and we
people?
don't,
How many people?
well, so we're a team of three and we have some investigators we use. And we are also entirely self-funded. So,
Do they donate? How do they donate?
please, please donate on our website. There is a donate page. That would be wonderful. So absolutely reach out to us. And I will tell you, with a team of three people and with the intense work that we do, I'm actually running to Capitol Hill after this webinar to go to a hearing. So, we don't just sit at the computer all day long doing investigations. There's a lot of other policy work that goes into it. But if you reach out to us, we will happily talk to you about your situation. We can hold a Zoom call. You can send us whatever documentation you have, and we can guide you. We can't necessarily do the work for you, but the goal here is to teach people how to be activists, how to be advocates.
Well, we'll follow up with you on the Wiley incident, because this needs to be addressed immediately. So I want to thank you for your time, Lisa, and thank you everyone for attending. We'll be hosting the Israel Now Forum webinars in 2026 on Tuesdays at noon Central. Our next webinar is on Tuesday, March the 3rd, with Benjamin Baird, Director of the Middle East Forum Action. He'll discuss his role leading a grassroots advocacy to create advocacy and create legislative victories in the United States. So check our website for announcements and your inbox. Our website is israelnowforum.org. Bye for now.
Yeah.